advanced Power BI developers. Our speaker for tonight is Asanka Padmakuran. He's a senior BI consultant and Azure data engineer from Curious, based in New Zealand. He's been working with business intelligence and data analysis for more than 10 years. He's a Microsoft certified solutions expert. Uh, so without taking much more time, I'm gonna hand over to Asanka. Yep. Did you froze? Yeah. So that's our first session for tonight. Asanka, are you?
Yep. So
There you go.
let me share my screen just to check whether can me all you see my screen, Pio?
Yes, we can see.
Yep.
Asanka.
Yeah.
There you go.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present these sessions, and thank you very much for everyone who's joining to the session. So the session is basically a tool for an advanced Power BI developer. So I want to emphasize and I want to focus on that this session is more into the people who actually do the Power BI development, not for the business users who do the Power BI reporting development and the modeling. And this is tools for the Power BI desktop, for the Power BI desktop application we use to do the development is the other tools that we can use for the Power BI developments. So the PO gave me the introduction to myself. So only thing I can tell is like I can give my blog URL in here and my LinkedIn profile and my Twitter. You can connect me through all those three. And let's quickly jump into the session. So the session is basically Power BI and external tools. So if you have been using Power BI, you might have seen that there's a ribbon available, something called external tools. So this ribbon is actually initially came to picture in 2020 June as a public preview, and then at that time most people start wondering, okay, pretty much everything is empty. Even in right now, if you are not using external tools, if you open the Power BI desktop and if you check, go to the ribbon and see external tool ribbon is pretty much empty, this session is ideal for you. So on the other hand, very recently, I think within like a couple of days ago, they actually went to general availability in this ribbon or the external tools. So which means that Power BI fully support the external tool features when it comes to the development. Right. So let's talk about what is this external tools and how these external tools work. So if you are familiar with the external tools, if you know in depth, so if you are familiar with the Power BI and if you know in depth of the Power BI, you know that Power BI is actually built on top of SQL Server and the Service Tabular engine. So if you are coming from a development background, if you do the data warehousing and BI technologies before Power BI comes to picture, we use SSAS multi-dimensional model. Then we move into the SSAS tabular model, and with the same time they implement the SSIS tabular model. They implement the Power BI. So, but for their backend implementation or for all the data modeling, they actually uses the SSAS tabular model. So, what all those tools actually does, the tool that I'm going to cover in this session is it uses XML endpoints when the Power BI is deployed into service, or it uses the TOM, Tabular Object Model class library to develop these tools. So the TOM is actually DLLs such as AMO, if you're familiar with the multidimensional. But it does is like it exposes objects available in the tabular model like databases, tables, columns, hierarchies, and data sources, all those information, especially the columns and the roles, and you can get that information and you can manipulate those objects within your code, right? So that's how all those tools are done. Not only that, if you have a like if you know that if you're coming from the development background, again you know that DMVs the same DMVs we are available in the SQL server is available for the analysis service tabular object as well, tabular model as well. In that case, like what this tool does is like tool like DAX Studio does is like it connect to these DMVs and extract the information available in these DMVs and showcase to you. So in in that sense, which means that all those tools I'm going to show is actually developed by certain people or certain organizations, and then which means that with the use of these two methods, and like using the TOM or using the dynamic management view, even you can develop a tools. If you go to the internet and if you search for the third-party tools or the tools available for the Power BI development, you will find that heap of tools available now developed by different people for do the different things. So you can contribute the community as well. Only thing is like if you're coming from the development background, if you are like expert in C sharp, you can use these two methods. You can connect to the tabular engine and get the DMB information, or you can use the TOM class library, and you can manipulate these objects, servers, database, model, data sources, and all this other information available in your Power BI model. You can read and write these informations, and you can basically create your own tools. So I have a couple of other slides at the end, but I want to spend more time on the demo. So I'm directly going to demo. The idea is like I want to showcase as much as tools possible, as well as much as features as possible. So what I'm going to do is like I have already created a model which connect to a contour retail DW. In that data warehouse, I have a table factor online sales, which has 12.6 million records and related dimensions. What I'm going to do is like I have already created this model. What I want to do is like I want to make this model a clean, effective data models, and then at the end, if I had time, I will show you how to do the documentation, and then I'm going to deploy this model to the service. The tool I have used in this demo, the tool I'm going to use in this demo is you can find it from the SQL BI tools site. I'm going to share this slide with you, or even if you search for the Power BI external tools, you will get the SQL BI site, or if you go for the Power BI tips site, you can see there's a business ops application I will show, which if you download the business ops, it actually gives you all the available applications, external tools, consolidate into one download files. So as you can see that if you download in here, which is a free one, you can get all the tools, all the third-party tools available right now, like the good tools available right now, consolidate into one download files. So you can download everything in a one go, right? So let's quickly go to the model that I have created. So this is the model that I wanted to show. I hope I still can share in. I'm still sharing my screen. So the factor online sales, I have created a simple star schema. I have a factor online sales and connect to the multiple dimensions, product, dim days, dim customers, dim currencies. It's a typical model we create when it's come to the Power BI. Okay. So if I check the how many records available in my facts table, as I said, like in my fact table, I have 12.6 million records. And if I go to my file, which is saved in my desktop, the PC, I'll show the size of this model in here. It's actually 725 MB, the PBIX file. So if you know that, the most of us, we don't have the we're not using the Power BI premium capacity or the any dedicated capacity. The most of the organization they use pro licensing. So if you go to the pro licensing, you know that the maximum data volume you can have, the maximum size of the PBIX file is 1 GB, right? So in this case, like I'm getting closer to 1 GB, but it's just I only have a one fact table, right? If I add a one more fact table, I'm going to exceed in my 1 GB file limit, and then I will not be able to deploy this file to the Power BI service. So first thing what I want to do is like I want to actually optimize the my model size. Optimize as in sense like I want to see whether I can minimize my model size in the Power BI file. So if I go back to my PBX file, this is pretty much nothing I can see from the storage information. I know that these are the tables available. I know that this table is the biggest table, but I don't know how I can actually optimize this model. I basically want to delete certain columns because I can't basically filter the rows. But even if to delete the columns, I'm not sure that which column is actually taking the most space and all those information. So the first thing what I'm going to do is like I have installed a couple of tools, Aml Toolkit, DAX Studio, Power BI Help in the tabulator. I'm trying to cover all those 4 tools as much as possible. The first one I'm going to actually try is actually DAX Studio. So when I click the DAX Studio, because I have already installed DAX Studio, it will open up the DAX Studio while connecting to my model. So you see that this is the my tables available in my model, whereas there are a couple of other tables available in the DAX Studio in my model. But if I check my you know PBIX file, I don't see these tables available. I only see these tables that I actually created from the my data warehouse. What happens in Power BI site is like whenever you created a model, and if you have a date time column, Power BI is actually creating a calculated table for each date time column. So if you check that, all these columns, for example, like dim currency has a load date column, and it actually by default it created as a hierarchy. The reason is actually it created a table to reference to this hierarchy load date. So if you have 10 columns with the date type of date type, date time data type, it will actually create 10 tables within your Power BI files. So that is what actually shown in here. But you can't see these files. If you can see, this is like kind of gray out because these are hidden from the Power BI desktop side. But you can actually see it actually take the space of your Power BI file. So first thing what I'm going to do is like I'm going to remove that table. So what I can do is like I can go to the files and go to the option and settings, go to the options, and there I can over there under the current file something called data load, you have something called time intelligence and auto date time. So when you keep that one on, which means that whenever you have a date type column, it actually creates the auto date type table and it treats as a different hierarchy. If I untick this one and click OK, right, and you will see that hierarchy is no longer available in my dim currency load date. And if you go back to the DAX Studio, you will see that instantly these tables are deleted from my model, right? So there are some scenarios like if you have a long date range, it can actually take a lot of spaces. So this the best thing is actually whenever you like in the Power BI side, Power BI desktop side, I only enable it for the current file, but you can do that for all the files created in the Power BI. In that case, you don't have to go to the current file. If you go to the global level date load, you can enable this in the global level. So which means that when you have untick this one, whenever you create a new PBX file, this will not happen to you, right? If you click this one, it will happen. It will again create the same timetable, right? Date timetable. Okay. So we go to back to the problem, but like in this case, like disabling those space, that those table will not save much space. So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to DAX Studio and going to the advanced section. Under the advanced section, we have something called view metrics, right? So what it does is like in the view metrics, it gives you information about the your model, especially about the how the Vertipack engine is storing your data. So it shows you that the total volume of your model is 1.36 GB. But actually, this is the space it take in the memory. But when you save a PBX file into the your hard drive, it actually do additional compression. That's why you say it is 700 megabytes. But when you load it to the memory, it actually get the more space. So in the memory, it takes 1.36 GB. Then it gives you information like what's the compatible level, how many tables you have, how many columns you have, all those information, right? And then if you go to the another tab, we have called the tables. This is the most important area that you can go in-depth analysis. in here it shows that the cardinality information of the table. Cardinality is that how many unique rows available in each table. So as I said, we have 12 million records. In the fact online says all the 12 million records are actually unique. And in customers, you have the 18,000 unique records. In stores, likewise, it shows that how many unique records are available in here. And it shows that in the data size, how many megabytes is taking. And I want to take you to the focus on this area, the percentage of the space taken from each and individual object. In this case, it says that out of all the space taken from this Power BI model, 99.61 is actually taken from my fact online says. All other tables are actually very small. If I expand this one, it shows more information about each and individual columns. So remember, all this information is actually extracted from the DMVs available in the model, right? So it shows that these three columns have a high cardinality because these 12 12 million records are actually unique and each and individual records, which means that that tabular model is actually column store. It's not a row store, which means that it stores as the columns. Each and individual column is compressed. And if you have a unique values, which means that you cannot do compressions, right? In this case, these three columns are not compressible, so that's why it's high cardinality columns. So this, if you remove these three columns, we'll see what happens, because if you see that the 50% of your total model is actually taken from one column, and 33% of the your model is taken from another columns. If you check these three columns alone, taking like maybe 80% or 90% of your total model space. So what I'm going to do is, like, because I have a more information about how each and individual column has taken space, and I know that I don't want these three columns in my model, and I can remove these three columns without any impact to my analysis. And what I'm going to do is, like, I'm just gonna delete these columns in my model and see the impact to my total volume, right? So I'm going to remove the checksum column. I'm going to delete it here. Check in here, and then I'm going to remove the sales. The other column is online sales key column. Okay, there was another column, I think the test ID column, right? Cool. Right, let's go back to the desktop, and again I want to show you the size of my file. So you can see that the size is actually 700 MB before I save the file. So what I'm going to do is, like, I'm going to save this file after deleting these three columns. Okay. Still saving. Cool. You can see that instantly our 700 MB file is reduced to 41 MB. So only thing we did was, like, we deleted three columns. So the idea is, like, with the DAX Studio's Vertipack Analyzer, you can have an idea about how each and individual object, how each and individual column is taking space in your model. And then you, with that information, you can actually minimize the size of your model. You can optimize the size of your model from like a couple of times. In this case, in my case, like, I saw that there are high coordinate columns, and if I remove the high coordinate columns, I actually save a lot of space in your model, right? So in that case, like, I have a workable model in my Power BI side. The next thing what I'm going to do is, like, so DAX Studio, the functionality of DAX Studio is not only that. The main functionality of DAX Studio is actually to write DAX, right? So if you are learning DAX in here, and if you are wanted to create measures and write complicated DAX queries, Power BI desktop is not the ideal place. So what you can do is, like, you can actually write the DAX queries in here. For example, like, it has good intelligence facility. You can say that, okay, I want to evaluate, and whatever you can drag and drop the columns, and it will generate the DAX for you, and you can get the information in here. output in here. Yeah, so you can see the values coming from the and as well as you can see all the functions available. If you are not familiar with all the functions, you can go to the functions here and you can drag and drop these functions. Like let's say that you want to see how the all works, and if you can, to the tooltip, you can see what each and individual function does. You can give an example of how it works. So DAX Studio is the ideal place to you to learn DAX as well as write the uh, complex calculations. That's not the other thing. So there, if I say that, okay, I have created a visualization here and see that, okay, there's some kind of a performance impact in my Power BI query, the Power BI visualizations. Let's say that if I click on sales model, it takes a lot of time to load the data. This is a hypothetical scenario. Like what you have to do is like, if you know that there's a performance issue, in Power BI desktop, there's pretty much nothing you can do. You know that performance impact, but there's no more information available for you. One thing you can do is like, only things available in Power BI desktop is you can go to the performance analyzer and see that, okay, how much it take in time. So if you enable the performance analyzer in Power BI desktop, and let's say that if you start recording and click on some visualization, it gives you information about like how much time the DAX took, how much time visualization take, and all the other information. But that's it. You pretty much don't know. We know the time is taking, but we don't know why it's taking time, where we can fix the issue. So what you can do is in here, you know that in the Power BI, you can copy the DAX query. In this case, like let's say this is the matrix, and I'm going to copy the query in here, and I'm going to paste that query in the DAX Studio. So with that, you can start do the your query debugging. The first thing I'm going to do is like I'm going to format this query because it kind of looks messy. So I can select this one and click the format query, and it will make your query in a better readable format, right? So once I do that, I can execute this query in DAX Studio and get the same data set is given to the Power BI desktop. This is the output actually given to the Power BI desktop. So then what I can do is you can see that you have the query plan and the server timing enabled. So if I click on these two and again execute this query, it takes certain times to again. Now it's enable this one and execute the query. There's something in the under down there. You can see that query plan information as well as server timing. So if you are coming from the development background and if you know SQL Server Tabular Engine, you know how to interpret the query plan, right? But this is for a very advanced user. But whereas in here, it shows you how the server timing happens in your tabular model, right? It gives you information like how much total time it took to execute and how much query, what are the queries actually executed within the tabular engine, and whether it's a scan type. And in here, it shows you how much percentage, how much time it took in the formula engine, how much time it took in the storage engine. And if you know from the if you're doing a performance um, enhancement, you know that Power BI formula engine or the tabular model formula engine is single threaded, which means that if you are one query is executing for long time, all other queries have to wait for executing the formula engine, which, and on the other hand, the tabular model storage engine is multi-threaded, which means that it can process or it can execute multiple queries simultaneously. So the idea is like use as much as storage engine and you use less time for the formula engine. But in my case, like 99% of my query is taken from the formula engine. So I know that there's something wrong. On the other hand, I know that this query is actually taken from the cache. So you know that Power BI is heavily using the cache, so that it takes a lot of cache. So I don't want to get that information from the cache query. So what I can do is I can clear the cache, right? And then I can execute the same query with the clear cache. We'll see how it's execute when the cache is not available. In this case, you will see that it takes different values. In this case, like it doesn't take storage engine, it doesn't take formula engine 90%, but it takes 70%, and it's the query is not using any cache at all. So in that case, like I know that how the the result set is cache in Power BI, how the performance is, and how the result set is not cache, how the performance is, which engine is which formula, which section of your tabular model is using the more times, and likewise. And this, if you go for the advanced section, you can do something very cool, which, for example, like let's see that if you go for the server and if this query is giving a different values, different execution statistics in different time, what you can do is like you can execute this query in a benchmark fashion, which means that if you click this run benchmark option, it gives you that option to run the same query multiple times from the cold cache and the warm cache. So in that case, like you can get an idea about with the multiple users, when multiple users see the same report, same visualization, how the impact of the what are the statistics you can get from this particular measure with the particular query. So if I run this one, I say that okay, execute same query 5 times in the cold cache and execute same query in the warm cache in 5 times. If I quickly run this one, it will execute these same queries from the DAX Studio multiple times, and it will give you a statistics information about how each and every how the average execution time, all those information for this query. So in that case, you have a better understanding about when multiple people are accessing your report, what's the their user experience. In this case, you can see that if you when this query is executed in the cold cache, the average time is like 238 millisecond, and if the warm cache is 16 millisecond. Likewise, you can get the information about the uh, summary information. And if you go to the detail, you can get the more information like how much time it took in the CPU, how much time it took in storage engine. Likewise, there are a lot of information available which is not available in the Power BI desktop to the troubleshooting, right? So there are a heap of things I can cover in the DAX Studio, but again, I want to cover a lot of tools, so I'm going to stop the cover in the DAX Studio. I want you to go and install it and start using DAX Studio and do the troubleshootings, performance analysis, Vertipack, or the things that you can do in the Power BI desktop, the advanced stuff, right? If you have any questions, just let me know. I can't see the screen. If you are there.
Yeah, sorry, I was.
Ah, no worries. Yeah. It's okay. Because I can't see the question panel or the chat window.
Yep, I'm checking on the chat. There
Yep.
are no questions yet. But if
Good.
you guys, I think I want to ask because I think that's everyone is thinking about it. All the toolkits, are they free to download or do?
Yeah, so pretty much everything I'm going to show in here is free, and I think almost apart from the Tabular Editor version 3, which is going to be a financial model, the one I'm using is free. The version 2 is free. Version 3 is going to be like a paid tool, but you can use the one I'm going to show is as a free one.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I have managed to sort out my the performance issue. I have managed to sort out my storage issue. The next thing what I'm going to do is like I'm going to clean this model, because if you can check my data set, it's not in a very user friendly manner. There's no spaces, there are so many unwanted columns, there are columns that these things actually business user is not interested. So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to open the tabular editor for those. So the tabular editor is the coolest tool that I have seen. It's a free tool. So when I open this one, it will ask that, okay, there are some of the experimental features available. So whether you want to open it or not, right? So in my case, like I'm going to go ahead with that one. So this is the tabulator tool, a normal Windows form application. But what it does is like it connect to your model and allow you to do heap of cool things uh, in a very easy manner. So the first thing what I'm going to do is like I'm going to hide all these columns which I don't want in my Power BI. So things like all these keys. So easiest thing is if you click on this one and you can see that make invisible, right? And it allows to give you the shortcut key as well, Control I. So if I click on this one and click all the way up to here and select I don't want this one, load date and upload date, and press Control I, it will go as grayed out, right? And then I'm going to do the same thing for other things as well. I don't want this to be visible. That's the only thing I don't want to see in this table. And go to dim store. I don't go store key, geographic key to visible the business users. It's pretty much something we do in all the Power BI models, just to clean up our model, just so that business user can have a clean look on my models, having not having the all unwanted IDs, columns, all those stuff, right? So I'm going to select all the unwanted IDs, which again these things business user will not do any analysis, and go to the only thing I do is I select this one. I can control, or I can use shift and press the control I. Very easily I can hide each and individual one. Right. I'm gonna click this one and go to the dim custom as well. As we can call this metadata information coming from the data warehouse. I don't want. So I managed to hide these things in here. But if you go to the Power BI desktop file, all those things are still available because I only did the operations in here, which is not actually affected in my model. To make these changes I did to affect in my Power BI desktop file, there's something called save the changes to the connected database. When you click this one, we'll see what happened to my Power BI model. You will see that immediately all those columns that I showed in here, for example, factor online sales, all the keys are no longer visible in my model, right? So that easily you can hide all the columns, right? Then I'm gonna hide it in here because I don't want to see any of this in here as well. The next thing what I'm going to do is, like, if you can see that all those columns are using the column names, I actually using the camel case, right? The camel case is, or the Pascal case is what the database people use. But for the business users, we don't want to have column names or field names like this. They actually prefer the spaces, right? They want to see at the read like the proper case, for example, sales space, order space, numbers. That's what we normally do when we give a model to the business user. If I want to do that, I want to right click on each and every one. I have to rename it in the model, which take a lot of time. So the tabular model, the most important thing is advanced scripting. So what they have done is, like, the tabular model developers, they actually use a more DL, and then on top of that they have created the wrapper class, wrapper framework, which means that if you are not expert in C sharp, you can actually write certain codes on top of that. For example, like, let's say that I'm going to write something like selected, right? So because whatever the object that I'm going to pick in this one is referring from the selected, and then when I type the dot, it gives you intelligence that what you're going to do. So if I say that, okay, selected column dot name is equal to, say that Asanka. So what I'm going to do is, like, I'm going to select a specific column. Let's see, just have a look at what I'm going to do is, I'm going to select this column and I'm going to execute the code that I written. Immediately when I execute, sorry, I have to the end line. So when I click this one, sorry, when I click this one, we'll see what happens. You see that, sorry. Okay, you see that my column name is actually changed into the name that I specified in here, right? So with that features, like, there are other heap of functions available in here. You can manipulate all those objects in a programmable manner, right? Which you cannot in the desktop, right? So what I'm going to do is, like, the good thing is, like, whenever you click, press Control Z, you can undo all those changes you do in here. So I just press the Control Z and go back to this one. So what I'm going to do is, like, first thing, I'm going to rename these things into the proper case. If you're not good at writing codes, if you go to the tabular editor document page, there's a heap of written codes, small code snippet that you can use, and with the each and individual functionalities of, for example, like, what I'm going to show is, like, I'm going to show you how to create a measure from the columns, how to generate time intelligence, all those codes. You just copy and paste this code and execute. For example, the first thing what I want to do is, like, camel case to a proper case. So there's something called camel case to proper case in here. If you go down in this one, you can copy and paste this code as it is, right? Let's copy this one, and let's paste in the script inside. So what it does is, like, for each and every object that I'm going to select in here, it actually do certain things and actually introduce a space in middle of the uppercase character. Let's see whether this works. So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to select these all the columns and execute this code, right? Immediately you will see that there's a space introduced in middle, right? So which means that I can do for all the columns available in my model, right? Here and execute in here, going to go here, execute in here. Very quickly, I'm going to rename my files the way the business user would like to see, right? Okay, I did the renaming. Let's go and save this one in model, and you will see that immediately this will go break because I have already used this in the my measures. So just forget about that one, because remember that gives you a good idea as well. Before you do any modification to your metadata, make sure you don't do the visualization first. Create the model first, do the cleaning everything first, and then do the visualization. If not, you all the visualization can break. Okay, so remember, now I did the changes, I did the renaming here, and now the business user have a proper readable format in your object rather than having a camel chaos. And if you do it one by one manually, it take a lot of time to rename all those objects one by one. Okay, then what I'm going to do is like, you know that if you're creating a Power BI model, each and individual measures, each and individual columns, in my case, like if you go the fact online says, it actually columns. These are actually columns available in my uh, model. As a best practice, what we normally do is like we hide the columns and we create a measure on top of that. There are a couple of reasons for that one, but if you don't know, you do a bit of searching why we do it. But it's always good to hide the columns and create a standard or the default measure for the same column. For example, like you hide the discount amount and create a discount amount measure, right? In that case, you can refer that one in any place you want, right? And it does not give you the performance impact. It's just too easy for you to do other related work when you do something like that. So what I'm going to do is like, again, go back to the my snips, the web page, and then I'm going to copy this code, which basically does is create the measure, right? Create a measure for column. I'm copy this code. Remember, I'm not writing anything. I'm just copying the code. So what it does is like for each selected columns, it create sum measure, right? Remember, this is only for the sum. If you want to change for the average or something like that, you have to change this code. But this is only for the sum. What it does is like for each and individual columns, it gets the one and then it hide the columns for that one. So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to select sales quantities, sales amount, return quantities, return amount, discount quantity, discount amount, and these are the measures that I want to actually, these are the columns that I want to hide and create the default measures. And I'm going to execute this code. And you will see that all these columns are gone, and on top of that, it actually create the measures. And let's save this one to here, right? Cool. Right. The next thing what I'm going to do is like, because I think I have to be very quick when it's come to time. The very common requirement for the Power BI is like they will ask you time series measure for each and individual measures, right? For example, like the sales quantity, they will ask you YTD, QTD, PTD, all those stuff, right? So what I do is like I have a again query which actually do the same thing. But in this case, what I've done is like I actually saved a query. So for that, I can open the save query in here. Let's go here. Only thing I have done is like I have copied the query, but I have changed my time series dimension name, as well as I have given a folder name called time series folder. So all the measures created from this script, it actually go to the new folder. So what it does is like whatever the measure I select here, okay, remember whatever the measures I select here, for each and individual measures, it will create YTD, previous year, year-on-year comparison, year-on-year comparison percentage, QTD, MTD, all the time series measures in a single click. Okay, let's see what happens. If I click this one, it will create a folder, and within the folder, we will see all those measures, right? It's not saved to the Power BI file yet. So when I process this one, right, we'll quickly go to my folders and you will see it in here. still saving because I have created a lot of measures. So you imagine like if you want to create the same set of measures, so same time series measures, how long does it take in the Power BI desktop, right? It's just a matter of copy and paste in code and do some kind of code changes and just click in the file. Okay. Let's check in some time to push all those changes to the Power BI file. I hope this will not crash because remember these tools are it's like third-party tools. No, it's not. So if you go with the Power BI desktop files, all the changes I did in the tabular models is now effective. So you have those measures, you have all the time series measures available in a couple of seconds. And if you are thinking these are not working, I can show you that these are actually give the information that you really want. Let's say that if you go in the MTD, it gives you the total MTD functions. The same thing you write in your DAX Studio if you use in the Power BI desktop to write these measures. Very simply, same measures are written in no time, right? Cool. There's another thing I want to show you. There's another cool feature which is called best practice analysis. So the best practice analysis is like, so if you create a Power BI file, you see that there are certain standards that we follow. The best practices are changing from company to company, but there are standard best practices we do with the Power BI. So what you can do is like you can go to the tools and manage best practices, and there's a best practices file available in the Power BI. If you go in here, best practice analyzer, they have a file. You can go to the JIT and you can download that file. I have already downloaded that file. What you can do is like you can add that file in here. And let's go to the best practice analysis. I have downloaded. Yep. So this is actually a JSON file which define that these are the rules I want to apply on top of this model, and it allows you to see which areas these rules are actually violating. For example, if I collapse this one, I'll show you what are the best practices. Check that. Provide format string for the visible numeric columns. Do not use floating point data types. Do not summarize numeric columns. Like heap of things that you should do when you're creating a nice model, right? So you can see that how many of these are violated and at which point these best practices are violated in your model, right? So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to select all this because I don't have time. I'm going to select all this. I'm going to say that, okay, apart from this one, which is do not summarize numeric column, I'm going to ignore all the rules, right? So in here, it will show you that, okay, these are the columns which I have as a numeric in my model. And by default, what Power BI does is like all the numeric columns, for example, like let's go for the dim date, right? All the numeric columns, calendar day, week, calendar month, they are actually aggregated. You can drag and drop in here. It actually give you a one value, aggregated value for that field. But I don't want these fields to be aggregated, right? Because these are actually attribute which I will showcase in my report as an individual. So what I want to do is like I want to, set these do not summarization property for each and individual property. It's an individual column. If I want to do that, it will take a lot of time. But what the best practice analysis say that, okay, these are the columns actually have that problem. Do you want to fix that one? So you can apply a fix as well. What you can do is like I'm going to select all these and say that, okay, these things I want to for example, I can say that, okay, apart from these columns, like let's go for the total cost. I want to summarize. No, I don't want to summarize it. Let's go for the okay, employee count maybe, right? Or maybe selling area size, or let's say the total income, total children, number of children's, number of cars. These things actually numeric columns that I want to keep, and rest of the columns I actually don't want to summarize, right? So I can say that, okay, ignore these items, and then I can say that, okay, select all these and apply the fix, right? And I apply the fix, it go back, and then I save this in here. Remember, have a look on these columns. You have a sigma symbol in here, and then when I deploy these changes back to the Power BI model and see what happens. All the sigma symbols are gone, which means that you from the script, from the best practice analysis, it fixes all the problems you had in your Power BI model, right? That's uh, that's a very important feature. That's very important thing that you can do is which in very minimum time you can make sure that your model is in a standard, right? And it gives the fix as well. Okay, so next thing what I'm going to show is like if I want to publish this all the changes to my Power BI service is either 1 or 0, which means that I either all the changes I did go to the service or none of the changes goes to the service. But let's say that okay, I'm doing some kind of a feature development, and then I see that okay, certain things are ready to the business user in my model and certain measures are not ready. I need to do some testing. But in my case, like if I push this publish button, all the measures that I've been working, all the changes I've been working will go to the business user. But I don't want to happen to that one. So that is where the next tool is Aml Toolkit comes to play. So what Aml Toolkit does is actually it gives you a comparison between two data models and show you excuse me, sorry, show you how the difference between these two tables. In my case, like the first source is the model. Then the other one is that the one I have deployed to my Power BI service, which is already available in my Power BI service. Let's go the Power BI service. So this is the model that available in my server, right? So if I go here and do quickly try to edit this one. Okay, so this is the model which I deployed first, which has all those things. None of the changes I did right now is in this service, right? So you see that all the sigma symbols, you don't see all the time series one, you don't see all the measures, you don't see the camel case, capsule, proper case things. These are the original one I had in the service. So now what I do is like I get the XML endpoint URL for this model and do a comparison between these two. Right? Let's do a comparison, and it will ask you to give it authentication. And let's open it in here. I think it's going to my other screen. Okay, yeah. So what it does is like it compare the file that I develop in my Power BI desktop and the file available in my Power BI service, right? Wait till it gives you all the information from the XML endpoint. Check the data. Still taking time. Just be patient. I think data is already here. Just do the comparison between those two files. Right, cool. So now it gives an information about, okay, these are the objects available in your source file, which is in the desktop, and all those things are missing in your model available in the Power BI service. And you say that if I do that, you need to create these things and these local, remember those date times, those are actually deleted in your new file, right? So it gives an impression, it gives a comparison between say that, okay, these are the changes happen to your model and these are the changes not available in your desktop. And if you can go in here, you can say that okay, you can hide skip object. The skip object is that the things that you're not going to do any changes, right? And then you can give a better understanding of what has happened, right? And then what you can do is actually you can say that okay, these are the measures that I develop, right? And I can say that okay, I want all these measures, right? And I don't want any measures related to a sales quantity, right? So I can say that, okay, I want all these, but none of these measures, remember, none of these related, these are, for example, I say that, okay, these are not ready to go to the production, right? These measures I created, but these all other thing changes are ready to go to the production. So what I can do is like, I can say that skip, right click on this one, skip selected object, right? So you can go to the skip. And then I can say that validate selection, right? You do the selection whether my selections are validated, right? Cool. Remember what are the changes I skipped? I skipped any measures I selected for the sales quantity, but all other things are selected. Then what I can do is actually um, still doing the validation, I think. Was it? Yep. Yep. done the validations, just click on OK, and then I can click on the update. Now what it does is like it skip these things I selected in my model and push all other changes to the Power BI service. Let's see whether it works the way we want to work. Let's commit changes to Power BI service. Let's keep our eye on this, right? We might have to refresh this model to see all the changes. Taking time. Right. So the metadata is deployed and it do a process. So you can select what process you want to do, whether you want to do the full process. In my case, I have said that I want to do a recalc, which means that it only actually do a calculation process. It actually does not push you the data. So this is another good thing, right? When you deploy the model in here, you actually deploy the data when you click on the publish. But in this case, it actually doesn't take much time because it does not actually push the data. It actually do the metadata operation, right? So if you go and here, go back in here, we might have to refresh. You now see that all these changes I did in desktop is pushed into the Power BI. But remember, I said that I don't want to change this to sales quantity. Those measures are not, but all other things that I said I want to have in my service are now available in my Power BI service. And it's just a metadata operation. So that's how cool AML Toolkit is. You can do selective deployment to the Power BI model, as well as you can pick what your process model is. You can say that I don't want to process at all, I just push the data metadata, or you can say that okay, just push the process recalc, which means that when you do a changes, it do the other calculations to the related measures as well, just to the safe side. And you can say that process only the affected table. There are a heap of options you available in the AML toolkit as well, right? So there's other tool I want to show, which is one is the Power BI helper. I don't think I have time, so I will wrap up in here, but I want you to see, have a look on these three tools, especially AML Toolkit, DAX Studio and Tabular Editor, and use it in your development. I'm pretty sure that it will save a lot of your time and it will give you a best result in your Power BI development. Right. The slide wise, I think I wanted to emphasize this slide. So these are the people who we need to be grateful about developing these two. I think Darren Gobsell and the community. So most of these tools are community driven. You can find the code in GitHub and you can contribute to this code, right? And if you go to the tabulator, you can get the code in the tabulator for GitHub. Christian Wade is the one who's developed the ML toolkit. It's kind of an old tool we use in the tabular model development back in the days. And the Power BI helper is developed by Reza Red and the Red Cat team. So these are the tools we should be grateful, but these are not the only people. There are a heap of other tools, cool tools available in the Power BI, which helps to you and which saves a lot of your time. Right? So 1 minute, I think so. Any questions? Here you are in mute.
Yep. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so the floor is open for questions. If you have any questions, you can put it on the chat. We have one coming in. These external tools are cool. Why aren't they part of standard PBI instead of to avoid the risk of external tools suddenly not working when PBI is upgraded?
Well, the one thing is like the reason they introduced the external tool is like there are a heap of things that you can do, and the community itself, especially the Daniel, I think they come up and say that okay, we can contribute the Power BI, because Power BI team is actually a commercial product and they put the focus on different features, whereas as a community we can, because they have given the access to the DLL, the class library, we found that okay, we can do the community found that we can do a lot of things using the DLL. That's why. But if you're worried about whether tools will not be working after a certain update, I really doubt it, because these tools are actually heavily used in Power BI standard as well, because if you go for the Power BI side, they promote these tools. So which means that these are not like a kind of pirates, or these are not a hack kind of tools. these are actual tools supported by Power BI, and the external tool program is supported by Power BI team.
Yeah, I think the DAX Studio is a great tool. I like how it can let you test and investigate the performance of your.
Yep.
It's very nice. Let me see if we have any other questions here. Yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to put it on the chat, or you can use the raise hand icon. Let me just check on the live if we have any questions on that side. Yeah, I don't. There are no. Do you have? If they want to find out more about these tools, do you have a blog where they can visit it, or is there any location where the resources can be found?
If you go for each individual tool site, because for example, DAX Studio, Tabulate, Aml Toolkit, they have their own site and they have done proper documentation of how to use with the samples. And even if not, like if you do a searching about the Google, you have a heap of videos available done by the each and individual developers for the each individual tools.
Awesome. All right. I'm giving 10 seconds for any more questions. If you have any, drop it on the chat. If not, then we'll thank Asanka for his time. Going once? I think that's all the questions.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Asanka. These are very useful tools you showed to us. Pretty powerful. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for giving the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much for your session. It's very enlightening. Yeah. So if you have any feedback about the session, you can drop it on the evaluation form. If you have any questions for Asanka, I think he shared his social media handles earlier, so you can contact him if you want.